All right. Now, one of the concerns aimed at Bitcoin is that it's a Ponzi scheme. The argument suggests that because the Bitcoin network is continually relying on new people buying in, that eventually it will collapse in price as new buyers are exhausted. So, in this episode of Crypto Talk Tuesday, we're going to take a serious look at this concern by comparing and contrasting Bitcoin to systems that have Ponzi scheme like characteristics, basically just to see if the claim holds up. The short answer is that Bitcoin does not meet the definition of a Ponzi scheme, but we're going to dive into it and see why that's the case. Let's get started, guys. Welcome to this episode of Crypto Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Mario Johnson. And every week we like to dive into the particular topics to help people get further educated on this world of cryptocurrency. This week, it's a great episode. It's a great talk that we're going to do, mainly because of the fact that we do hear a lot of griping and complaining about Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme, Bitcoin being a scam, so on and so forth. I see that as mainly coming from people who, the ones who are well respected in other industries, mainly the gold industry, is because they're a gold bug. You know, they made a living off of buying and selling gold. So Bitcoin threatens that market cap. So I can see the I guess you could say the agenda behind them putting out, what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, information related to Bitcoin being a potential Ponzi scheme, mainly because of the fact that it threatens their livelihood. And I look at it as me personally, I don't just hold Bitcoin. I hold Bitcoin and gold. They can go hand in hand with one another. They both serve a purpose, and they both, operate outside of the system to fight the fiat currency system to, pretty much operate as a hedge in storing your wealth and securing your wealth. So for those, again, the major players in the gold industry that are anti-Bitcoin, it would be, I would say it would behoove them to I'm not going to necessarily say convert over to Bitcoin, but to at least having some Bitcoin exposure because, like Satoshi Nakamoto says, it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit just in case it takes off. And from what we can see, it's definitely taken off, given that Bitcoin alone has crossed the $1 trillion market cap. Now, before we get started, I do want to give my disclaimers because disclaimers are awesome. Nobody wants to get sued over here. The information provided in the Crypto Talk Tuesday discussion is for educational purposes only. Myself, Crypto Scholars LLC, are not financial advisors and do not offer or provide financial advice in any sort. Please do not buy or sell anything based on these sessions. Again, this is purely for educational purposes. I share with you guys what I personally do with my portfolio. I give the information that I've come across, the things that I've learned in my time in studying cryptocurrency as a blockchain developer, but also as a cryptocurrency investor. So just, created a space to share the knowledge that I've received, and I've definitely benefited from it in a major way. And as with most people who have found a way to benefit, who necessarily wasn't freely given that information, I'm going to pass it on to everybody else so we can all eat off this table that's growing, known as cryptocurrency. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to use an article written by Lynn Alden, who is a great, I follow her. She's a great financial brain in the industry. She was the one who really broke down whether or not Bitcoin could be determined as a Ponzi scheme. And she gave her thesis was incredible. So what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to put it up so you guys can see as I'm following down, but I want to break it down section by section. I want to read a section, really give an analysis of the importance to, what it is she's doing in her compare and contrast. And also, I want to hear from you guys, what you guys think from each section that we go through as we're, breaking it down and really learning about, one, the characteristics of Bitcoin from a technical standpoint. So you can see that it has more utility, more usability, and, it's a viable asset, especially one worthy of being investing into, because it's what they call disruptive. It is groundbreaking. And it has a lot of potential to do some incredible things that it hasn't already done yet, that is going to continue to do. So before we get started, I'm waving over here because this is where my webinar screen is. I know my camera's right there, but I always wave to the monitor that I'm looking at when I have everybody on there. So I want to thank everybody for joining once again. I truly appreciate you guys coming on and being a part of this. I'm definitely going to open the floor up so that you guys can give your comments again for each section that we go through. I don't want to be the only one talking here. And I want to kind of, get your breakdown, get your what it is that you're able to comprehend and digest from each section that we go through. So before we get started, would anybody like to kind of share an opening statement or a message or anything? I guess do the raise hand thing on Zoom if you'd like to say anything before we get started. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Oh, y'all shy today, huh? All right, I'm gonna let y'all be shy today. It's okay. Well, also too, can you guys hear me okay? I didn't even do a sound check. It looks like you guys can hear me okay, but I just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay. Do the little raise hand thing if you guys can hear me okay. 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 Good. 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 All right. All right. So you guys can raise your hands when it's time to hear me, but when I ask you to say something, y'all quiet. I got it. I got it. It's okay. But we'll go ahead and jump into it, and we'll get started. Let me go ahead and switch my screen over here. And if you guys notice, I'll probably be looking in the opposite direction because that's where I'm going to be reading from. So again, this is an article that was written by Lynn Alden in regards to the question of whether or not Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. So she gives a point-by-point analysis. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we need to define a Ponzi scheme. So as she points out, to start with tackling the topic of Bitcoin as a Ponzi scheme, we need a definition. So here's how the US SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, defines a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud that pays existing investors with funds collected from new investors. Ponzi scheme organizers often promise to invest your money and generate high returns with little or no risk. But in many Ponzi schemes, the fraudsters do not invest the money. Instead, they use it to pay those who invested earlier and may keep some of the funds for themselves. With little or no legitimate earnings, Ponzi schemes require a constant flow of new money to survive. When it becomes hard to recruit new investors, or when large numbers of existing investors cash out, these schemes tend to collapse. Ponzi schemes are named after Charles Ponzi, who duped investors in the 1920s with the postage stamp speculation scheme. That's funny. People got scammed from a postage stamp scheme. I would love to do a little bit more digging to find out exactly how that took place. Anyway, continuing on, many Ponzi schemes share common characteristics. Look for these warning signs: high returns with little or no risk. Every investment carries some degree of risk, and investments yielding high returns typically involve more risk. The high volatility. The more riskier it is, the greater the chance of a payout. Be highly suspicious of any guaranteed investment opportunity. Overly consistent returns. Investments tend to go up and down over time. Be skeptical about an investment that regularly generates positive returns regardless of overall market conditions. If somebody tells you about, and I'm gonna pick on Dogecoin because every week I pick on Dogecoin, but if somebody tells you about an investment opportunity and they're like, it's going to go to the moon, it's going to go to the moon, it's only going to go up, and it only goes up, that should definitely raise a red flag with you, because nothing goes up and continues to go up, it only goes up. You want to see some retracement, you want to see some correcting in every chart that you look at, because it shows a healthy market in regards to that particular investment. The next one on the list is unregistered investments. Ponzi schemes typically involve investments that are not registered with the SEC or with state regulators. Registration is important because it provides investors with access to information about the company's management, products, services, and finances. If you guys remember who joined the webinar last week, I spoke about the importance of having a transparent team. When you're trying to decide a particular cryptocurrency that you want to invest in, it's very important that they have a team that's continuously giving you guys updates that keep you in the loop. It's not really hard to get information about the project, and they have a clear, defined roadmap. You know exactly what's going on. So this kind of talks about that under the unregistered investment section. Next, we talk about unlicensed sellers. Federal and state security laws require investment professionals and firms to be licensed or registered. Most Ponzi schemes involve unlicensed individuals or unregistered firms. Next one is secretive, complex strategies. Avoid investments if you don't understand them or can't get complete information about them. And then we have issues with paperwork. Account statement errors may be a sign that funds are not being invested as promised. And difficulty receiving payments. Be suspicious if you don't receive a payment or have difficulty cashing out. We're really going to talk about this further down in the article, because it talks about, and I know I keep segueing, but in this particular thesis, it talks about how during certain times, even last year when the lockdown first took place, you had a hard time getting your money out of the bank. They started restricting your cash withdrawal amounts. Some banks would only let you take out $100 a day. Some banks, had $1,000 restriction. They really clamped down because when people were doing those panic buying, when they were buying toilet paper at mass, don't ask me why they were buying a ton of toilet paper. And people were starting to do bank runs. They were trying to, have cash on hand because, during times of those particular crises, cash is king, as people like to say. So I can't wait till we talk on how you can correlate this particular aspect of the fiat system, of the banking system, to being a Ponzi scheme. We'll get into that. Now, let's see. Ponzi scheme promoters sometimes try to prevent participants from cashing out by offering even higher returns and higher returns for staying put. Now, she notes that she thinks that's a great set of information to work with. Now, we can see how many of those attributes, if any, Bitcoin has. So let's go next in this section here. She's basically going to talk about how Bitcoin was started, how Bitcoin was launched, how Bitcoin was introduced to the world. Now it says, before we get into comparing Bitcoin point by point to the above list, we can start with a recap of how Bitcoin was launched. In August 2008, someone identifying himself as Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin.org. 2 months later, in October 2008, Satoshi released a Bitcoin white paper. If you haven't read that white paper, I would highly suggest you read that. It's a little bit technical, yes, but it gives you literally step by step the inner workings of Bitcoin. So if you truly want to understand, how Bitcoin operates, how Bitcoin is so disruptive, why it is so disruptive, read that white paper. Now, this document explains how the technology would work, including the solution to the double spending problem. As you can see from the link, which we didn't open the link, it was written in the format and style of an academic research paper, since it was presenting a major technical breakthrough that provided a solution for well-known computer science challenges related to digital scarcity. It contained no promises or enrichment of returns. Then, 3 months later, in January 2009, Satoshi published the initial Bitcoin software. In the custom Genesis block of the blockchain, which contains no spendable Bitcoin, he provided a time-stamped article headline about bank bailouts from the Times of London, likely to prove that there was no pre-mining. We'll talk about pre-mining here in a little bit, and to set the tone for the project. From there, it took him 6 days to finish things in mine block 1, which is known as the Genesis block, which contained the first 50 spendable Bitcoin. And he released the Bitcoin source code that day on January 9th. By January 10th, Hal Finney publicly tweeted that he was running the Bitcoin software as well. And right from the beginning, Satoshi was testing the system by sending Bitcoins to Hal. Interestingly, since Satoshi showed how to do it with the white paper more than 2 months before launching the open source Bitcoin software himself, technically, someone could have used the newfound knowledge to launch a version before him. It would have been highly unlikely due to Satoshi's big head start in figuring all of this out and understanding it at a deep level, but it was technically possible. He gave away the key technological breakthrough before he even launched the first version of the project. That's very key right there. That's very important. Between the publication of the white paper and the launch of the software, he answered questions and explained his choices for his white paper to several other cryptographers on an email list in response to their critiques. Almost like an academic thesis defense. Anyone who's, going through a PhD program, I know my brother, David Stewart, he's doing that right now, and he has to defend his thesis. And several of them could have been technical enough to steal the project from him if they were less skeptical. After launch, a set of equipment that is widely believed to belong to Satoshi remained a large Bitcoin miner throughout the first year. Mining is necessary to keep verifying transactions for the network, and Bitcoins had no quoted dollar price at the time. He gradually reduced his mining over time as mining became more distributed across the network. There are nearly 1 million Bitcoins that are believed to belong to Satoshi that he mined through Bitcoin's early period and that he never moved from their initial address. He could have cashed out at any point with billions of dollars in profit, especially today, but so far has not. Over a decade into the project's life, it's not known if he's still alive, but other than some early coins from test transactions, the bulk of his coins haven't moved. It's truly just a dead wallet. Not long after, he transferred ownership of his website domains to others. And ever since, Bitcoin has been self sustaining among a revolving development community with no input from Satoshi. Bitcoin is open source. Anybody who doesn't know what open source is, it basically means you basically post the software for free. You post the code for free for everyone to view, for everyone to review, for everyone to critique, for everyone to use, which we'll talk about later on when they had a lot of forks of Bitcoin. But as we said, Bitcoin is open source and it's distributed around the world. The blockchain is public, transparent, verifiable, auditable, and analyzable. Firms can do analytics of the entire blockchain and see which Bitcoins are moving or remaining in place in various addresses. An open source full node can be run on a basic home computer and can audit Bitcoin's entire money supply and other metrics. We talked about that last week when we talked about, it forces honesty amongst the Bitcoin holders because you can verify anybody's wallet as long as they give you the public address. So they can't necessarily be dishonest about how much Bitcoin they truly have. That would be really good in regards of when we talk about sovereignty of a particular government or a particular corporation, because it proves their liquidity. Now, let's see, with that in mind, we can then compare Bitcoin to the red flags of being a Ponzi scheme. Now, here's the first one: investment returns not promised. Satoshi never promised any investment returns, let alone high investment returns or consistent investment returns. In fact, Bitcoin was known for the first decade of its existence as being extremely high volatility speculation. For the first year and a half, Bitcoin had no quotable price. And after that, it had a very volatile price. The online writings from Satoshi still exist, and he barely ever talked about financial gains. He mostly wrote about technical aspects, about freedom, about the problems of the modern banking system, and so forth. Satoshi wrote mostly like a programmer, occasionally like an economist, and never like a salesman. We have to search pretty deep to find instances where he discussed Bitcoin potentially becoming valuable. When he did talk about the potential value or price of a Bitcoin, he spoke very matter-of-factly in regards to how to categorize it, whether it would be inflationary or deflationary, and admitted a ton of variance for how the project could turn out. Digging around for Satoshi's quotes on the price of value of a Bitcoin, here's what she found. The fact that new coins are produced means the money supply increased by a planned amount, but this does not necessarily result in inflation. If the supply of money increases at the same rate that the number of people using it increases, prices remain stable. If it does not increase as fast as demand, there will be deflation, and early holders of money will see its value increase. Next quote. It might make sense just to get some. I talked about it earlier in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once it gets bootstrapped, there are so many applications. If you could effortlessly pay a few cents to a website, as easy as dropping coins in the vending machine. Next quote. In this sense, is more typical of a precious metal. Instead of the supply changing to keep the value the same, the supply is predetermined and the value changes. As the number of users grow, the value per coin increases. It has the potential for a positive feedback loop. As users increase, the value goes up, which could attract more users to take advantage of the increasing value, which is probably why most of you guys are interested in, Bitcoin today and other cryptocurrencies, because the value is going up. I mean, it all makes sense. That's that positive feedback loop that he's referencing. Next quote. Maybe it could get initial value circularly, as you suggested, by people foreseeing its potential usefulness for exchange. I would definitely want some. Maybe collectors. Any random reason could spark it. I think the traditional qualifications for many were written with the assumption that there are so many competing objects in the world that are scarce, an object with the automatic bootstrap of intrinsic value would surely win out over those without intrinsic value. But if there were nothing in the world with intrinsic value that could be used as money, only scarce but intrinsic value, I think people would still take up something. I'm using the word scarce here to only mean limited potential supply. As we know, Bitcoin isn't scarce, it's finite. It has a true set amount of coins that will ever be produced, period. And nothing can change that. A rational market price for something that is expected to increase in value will already reflect the present value of the expected future increases. In your head, you do a probability estimate and balancing the odds that it keeps increasing. I know I do that. That's why I'm currently invested in it, heavily invested in it, to be honest with you. I'm sure that in 20 years, there will either be very large transaction value or no transaction value. That's what people say. Bitcoin is either going to go to the moon, it's either going to go to $1 million and beyond, or it's going to go to zero. Currently, looking at the chart, is trekking more in the to the $1 million direction than it is to the zero direction. And that's if you zoom out. Don't look at the, I had to put that out there. Don't look at the current retracement that it's doing as of yesterday, I think Sunday or Monday yesterday, because that's what we would like to call a shakeout, is to get the weak hands to sell their Bitcoin so that the strong hands can buy it and make it even harder for you to get some next time, because then you're going to have to pay more. You see, Bitcoins have no dividend or potential future dividend. Therefore, not like a stock, more like a collectible or a commodity. Now, promising unusually higher consistent investment returns is a common red flag for being a Ponzi scheme. And with Satoshi's original Bitcoin, there was none of that. Over time, Bitcoin investors have predicted very high prices, and so far those predictions have been correct. But the project itself from inception did not have those attributes. So before we go into the open source section, I want to give you guys an opportunity to speak on what we just, basically what we just discussed in regards to it not promising any investment returns. Like, do you guys understand how important that is when you're comparing it to a Ponzi scheme? Let's talk about Bernie Madoff or any other guys who ran scams. Oh, the perfect scams that are going around right now. You send me a half a Bitcoin, I'll send you back 5 Bitcoin. Those are the characteristics of a Ponzi scheme. So, does anybody have anything they kind of want to comment on from that first section before we move into the open source debate? If you do, kind of raise your hand, and I'll turn your microphone on for you. Is everybody okay? How y'all doing? Person check. We're good. Raise your hands. Everybody okay? All right. I see Pam raise her hand. Alex raised their hand. Okay, great. All right, so we're doing good. All right, anybody have anything that they want to add? Say yes if you have anything that you'd like to add. Oh, I see a Q&A here. Hold on a second. Okay. All right, good. Okay, so we're good. All right. All right, well, continuing on. I guess y'all don't want to talk to me today. That's okay. By the time we finish this, I'll make y'all talk to me. It's all right. All right, so open source, the opposite of secrecy. Most Ponzi schemes rely on secrecy. If the investors understood that an investment they owned was actually a Ponzi scheme, they would try to pull their money out immediately. The secrecy prevents the market from appropriately pricing the investment until the secret gets found out. For example, investors in Bernie Madoff's scheme thought they owned a variety of assets. In reality, early investor outflows were just being paid back from new investor inflows, rather than money being made from actual investors. Same thing. If you guys think about that thing that was going around the internet, that circle game, the wheel. and you had to buy in for like $50 or $100, but you had to bring in 8 more people, and the only way you could get paid was by bringing in those 8 people, and those 8 people brought in 8 people, and so on and so forth. That's kind of how that would work in regards to that. So when they talk about the fact that the initial investor inflows are basically being paid from new investor I'm sorry, the early investor outflows are basically being paid for new investor inflows. That's kind of a great example of how that would work. So the investments listed on their statements were fake, and for any of those clients, it would be nearly impossible to verify that they are fake. Now, before I read this next paragraph, I see that Cecilia has her hand raised. I'm gonna lower the hand. Did you want to ask a question, Cecilia? Did you want to make a statement? Say yes or raise your hand again if you do. Okay, I'll take that as a no. All right, so we'll continue on. All right, so next paragraph. Bitcoin, however, works on precisely the opposite set of principles. As a distributed piece of open source software um, that requires majority consensus to change, every line of code is known and no central authority can change it. A key tenet of Bitcoin is to verify rather than to trust. Software to run a full node can be freely downloaded and run on a normal PC, and can audit the entire blockchain and the entire money supply. It relies on no website, no critical data center, and no corporate structure. For this reason, there are no issues with paperwork or difficulty receiving payments, referencing some of the SEC red flags of a Ponzi. The entire point of Bitcoin is to not rely on any third parties. It is immutable and self-verifiable. Bitcoin can only be moved with the private key associated with a certain address, and if you use your private key to move your Bitcoin, there's nobody who can stop you from doing so. There are, of course, some bad actors in the surrounding ecosystem. People relying on others to hold their private keys rather than doing so themselves have sometimes lost their coins due to bad custodians, but not because the core Bitcoin software failed. I talk about that a lot when I speak on those who um, buy their cryptocurrency on like apps. Not talking bad about the app, but apps like Robinhood, things like that. When you utilize those apps, for one, you never take possession of the cryptocurrency. You never take possession of the Bitcoin or Dogecoin or any other coin that you buy off those particular apps. They'll only allow you to settle in cash. So for any reason, god awful situation where the US dollar collapses, and on paper you have let's say $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, but it's tied into that app, they're not going to give it to you. You're not going to be able to actually take the Bitcoin. All they can do is give you the dollars, and then from there you're kind of left on your own to have to fend for yourself in that regard. So excuse me, that's where that's really important in regards to custodying your own keys. That way nobody can take it from you. You don't have to worry about something happening in regards to a third party, because it's all on you. You're fully responsible for that situation. Now, going back to it, third party exchanges can be fraudulent or can be hacked. Phishing schemes or other frauds can trick people into revealing their private keys or account information, but these are not associated with Bitcoin itself. And as people use Bitcoin, they must ensure they understand how the system works to avoid falling for scams in the ecosystem. That's one of the main reasons why I created this particular webinar series, this particular community, is to help educate people on, one, properly utilizing cryptocurrency, and two, understanding that they have full control. You don't have to send money to somebody in order for them to invest it for you. Do it yourself. Everything should be done by you, for you, in the hopes of you becoming more familiar with it. Because I personally, I like to say, if anything's going to happen to my money, it's going to be because I made something happen to it, not because I trusted it with someone else and they lost it. So that's really important in regards to that. All right, going back. Now there are, let's see. Now, before we get to the no pre-mine section, which we talked about, this is very important, by the way, the no pre-mine. I do want to give you guys an opportunity to ask a question or make a statement based off of this section or any other section that we just covered. So do you guys have anything you want to add? Anything you guys want to ask real quick? I know it's a lot, and I'm kind of, going through it as quickly as I can, but I want to make sure that I give you guys opportunity to comment on each section before we have a general breakdown. All right, let's continue on. Oh, wait, no. Chantel has a question. Let's open the floor up to Chantel. All right, go ahead.
Us get like more than one wallet. Just
I didn't hear
for
you say
like
that one more
backup.
time. Say that one more time, Chantel.
Do you recommend us get more than one wallet just in case anything happens? Like I know like the Ledger wallets, those come with like two. But do you recommend us keeping on multiple wallets?
Well, with that, you don't necessarily have to use multiple wallets. And I say that because of the fact that the most important thing is your privacy key, is your seed phrase, that 24-word phrase that you have to set up when you first create the wallet, when you first activate the Ledger wallet. So as long as you have that, if anything were to happen to the physical USB drive, the physical device, it's okay because you'll have that seed phrase. So you can actually import that seed phrase into anything else. You can import it into a software wallet on your phone. If you were to download any type of wallet application, you can put that seed phrase in. It'll manage all your coins. And you can also just buy another ledger, so having a backup is cool, but the most important thing to have is that seed phrase.
So I remember saying, I guess it was a video when they were saying like if you're gonna keep things stored on your phone, to do it from a phone that you don't normally use or a device that you don't normally use to like access the internet or anything like that. That way it can't be hacked. Is that still recommended?
It is, and it's recommended because of the fact that you don't want to save your seed phrase on your phone. You definitely, or you don't want to run into a situation where you get SIM swapped. They do those SIM attacks and whatnot. And if you have like what do you call it, like a 2FA set up to where they send you a code through text message. Sorry. You don't want that to be an issue. I mean, we're small fish, so I don't think that would be an issue for us. But if you were to truly trust a software wallet that's 100% on your phone, then I would definitely have a alternate phone, like a burner phone that has data, something like that, something that you don't regularly use and is not regularly connected to the internet. So, a person can easily get to your crypto that you have saved on that phone.
Okay.
All right. So, we have any other questions around this particular topic before I get into the no pre-mining section of the why Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme? All right, let's continue on. Okay, and I know this seems like a class, but hell, it is. It is a class. So, I want you guys to be as educated as humanly possible and as ready as humanly possible to get into the world of cryptocurrency investing. I don't want you to get out there, and they say you have to learn it the hard way. I don't want you to have to learn it the hard way, because when it comes to investing your money, learning it the hard way means you can lose money. And if I can help you guys in that aspect, I'm gonna do everything that I can to help you guys so that you don't lose money, so that you go in with the tools, like they say, you're properly prepared with the tools necessary to make well-informed decisions and, do some great investing and potentially get some great returns. So anyway, going back to the article. So now we're going to go into the no pre-mine section. So as previously mentioned, Satoshi mined virtually all of his first coins at a time when the software was public. and anybody else could mine them. He gave himself no unique advantage in acquiring coins faster or more easily than anyone else. It had to expend computational power and electricity to acquire them, which was critical in the early period for keeping the network up and running. And as previously mentioned in this article, the white paper was released before any of it, which would be unusual or risky to do if the goal was mainly about personal monetary gain. In contrast to this unusually open and fair way that Bitcoin was launched, many future cryptocurrencies didn't follow those same principles. Specifically, many later tokens had a bunch of pre-mined conceptions, meaning that the developers would give themselves and their investors coins before the project became public. Ethereum, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ethereum. I'm a heavy investor in Ethereum. It's the number 2 coin right behind Bitcoin. But Ethereum's developers provided 72 million tokens to themselves and their investors prior to any being made available to own by the broader public, which is more than half of the current token supply of Ethereum. It was a crowdsourced project. Ripple Labs pre-mined 100 billion XRP tokens, with the majority being owned by Ripple Labs, and gradually began selling the rest to the public, while still holding the majority, and is currently being accused by the SEC of selling unregistered securities. I don't know if you guys are familiar with XRP, but XRP used to be the number 3 coin, pretty big, great utility. But as you can see, the creators of XRP, Ripple Labs, pre-mined 100 billion. They gave themselves 100 billion tokens before they even allow anybody to partake in the network. That's insane. 100 billion. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. All right, so a case can be made in favor of pre-mining in certain instances, although some are very critical of the practice. In a similar way that a startup company offers equity to its founders and early investors, a new protocol can offer tokens to its founders and early investors, and crowdsourced financing is a well-accepted practice at this point. She said she's going to leave that debate to others. Few would dispute that early developers can be compensated for work if their project takes off, and funds are helpful for early development. As long as it's fully transparent, it comes down to what the market thinks is reasonable. When defending against the notion of being a Ponzi scheme, however, Bitcoin is miles ahead of most other digital assets. Satoshi showed the world how to do it first, with the white paper, months in advance, and then put the project out there in an open source way on the first day of spendable coins being generated with no pre-mine. A situation where the founder gave himself virtually no mining advantage over other early adopters sure is the cleanest approach. Satoshi had to mine the first blocks of coins with his computer just like anyone else, and then never spent them other than by sending some of his initial batches out for early testing. This approach improved the odds of it becoming a virtual movement based on economic or philosophical principles rather than strictly about riches. Unlike many other blockchains over the years, Bitcoin development occurred organically by a revolving set of large stakeholders and voluntary user donations, rather than via pre-mined or pre-funded pool of capital. On the other hand, giving yourself an initial investors most of the initial tokens and then having later investors start from mining from scratch or buy into it opens up more avenues for criticism and skepticism, and begins to look more like a Ponzi scheme, whether or not it actually is. That was good. That was really good. All right, next section talks about leaderless growth. One thing that makes Bitcoin really interesting is that it's the one big digital asset that flourished without centralized leadership. Satoshi created it as its anonymous inventor, worked with others to guide it through the first 2 years with continued development on open forums, and then disappeared. From there, other developers took the mantle in terms of continuing to develop and promote Bitcoin. Some developers have been extremely important, but none of them are critical for its ongoing development or operation. In fact, even the second round of developers after Satoshi largely went in other directions. Hal Finney passed away in 2014. Some other super early Bitcoiners became more interested in Bitcoin Cash or other projects at various stages. The creator of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, used to be a Bitcoin developer. one of my favorite developers right now, Charles Hoskinson, who's the creator of Cardano. He also used to be a Bitcoin developer, an early Bitcoin developer, and then became an Ethereum developer who now has just, created his own company and created his own blockchain under Cardano. So they all started as Bitcoin developers. As Bitcoin has developed over time, it has taken on a life of its own. The distributed development community and user base in the market when it comes to pricing various paths after hard forks has determined what Bitcoin is and what it is useful for. The narrative has changed and expanded as time went on, and market forces rewarded or punished in various directions. For years, debate centered around whether Bitcoin should optimize for storing value or optimize for frequent transactions on the base layer, and this is what led to multiple hard forks that all devalue compared to Bitcoin. The market clearly has preferred Bitcoin's base layer to optimize for being a store of value and large transaction settlement network, to optimize for security and decentralization, with an allowance for frequent smaller transactions to be handled on secondary layers. Every other blockchain-based token, including hard forks and those associated with totally new blockchain designs, comes on the coattails of Bitcoin, with Bitcoin being the most self-sustaining project of the industry. Most token projects are still founder-led. Let me say that one more time. Most token projects are still founder-led, often with the big pre-mine, as we just talked about, XRP being one of them, Ethereum being another, with an unclear future should the founder no longer be involved. Some of the sketchiest tokens have paid exchanges for being listed to try to jumpstart a network effect, whereas Bitcoin already had the most natural growth profile. So that, like I said, that's a big section there when you talk about leaderless growth, because of the fact that Bitcoin has been organic. Like it truly fits more in the kind of category as a movement versus anything other than. All right. Now, before we get into the unregistered investment and unlicensed sellers, I'm going to take a quick break and I'm going to drink some water. So you guys have anything you guys want to talk about before we get into the next section here? I know I'm trying to go through it as quickly as possible so we can have time to really have a good conversation on it. That was a good opportunity for you guys to get some water too. Your ears might be a little dried out from listening to me talk a whole lot. All right. So now let's go over into the unregistered investments and unlicensed sellers. All right. So the only items on the red flag list that may apply to Bitcoin are the points that are the points that refer to investments that are unregulated. This doesn't inherently mean that something is a Ponzi. It just means that a red flag is present and investors should be cautious, especially in the early days of Bitcoin. Buying some magical internet money would have been, of course, a highly risky investment for most people to make. Bitcoin is designed to be permissionless, to operate outside of the established financial system. We talked about that as incomparable to gold as well, with philosophical leanings towards libertarian cryptographic culture and sound money. For most of its life, it had a steeper learning curve than traditional investments, since it rests on the intersection of software, economics, and culture. Some SEC officials have said that Bitcoin and Ethereum are not securities, and by a logical extension, have not committed securities fraud. I'll be honest with you. Ethereum, you can possibly make a case because you have a founder, you have a head of Ethereum, but the SEC can't come after Bitcoin, because who are they going to come after? There's no company. There's no established entity that owns Bitcoin. It's 100% decentralized. So they kind of had no choice but to consider it not as a security, because who are they going to find in that regard? Anyway, not to dwell on that. Many other cryptocurrencies or digital assets have, however, been classified as securities. Some, like Ripple Labs, have been charged with selling unregistered securities. That literally goes into the point I just made in regards to who are you going to find? Who are you going to go after? They kind of didn't have a choice when it comes to whether or not they were going to consider Bitcoin as as property, i.e. a commodity, or as a security. The IRS treats Bitcoin and many other digital assets like commodities for tax purposes. So in the early days, Bitcoin may have indeed been an unregistered investment, but at this point, it has a place in tax law and regulatory frameworks around the world. Regulation changes over time, but the asset has reached the mainstream. It's so mainstream that Fidelity and other custodians hold it for institutional clients, and JP Morgan gives their price targets for it. Currently, I think their price target, they're saying that this year, they look at Bitcoin reaching around $360,000 to $380,000. I think that's JP Morgan's current price prediction for it. Now, many people who have not looked deeply into the industry lump all cryptocurrencies together. However, before I say the however part, that I want to touch on that. How a lot of people tend to lump all cryptocurrencies together, i.e., Dogecoin. They compare what Bitcoin has done, the movement that Bitcoin has done, and they're like, look, if Bitcoin can get to $50,000, $60,000, just imagine what Dogecoin can do. They are not one and the same, people. Their fundamentals are definitely not the same. Oh, excuse me. And you have to understand that I'm going to pick on Dogecoin every opportunity I get, because I don't want you guys, me personally, I'm not giving financial advice. I personally do not want you guys investing in Dogecoin. That's just me. If you do invest in it and you make some good money, awesome. Much more power to you. I appreciate it. But at the same time, I don't see it as a sustainable investment. And we're in this for the long term. Of course, we want to get some short-term gains, but we're definitely in this for the long term. All right, so going back, however, it is important for prospective investors to look into the details and find important differences. Lumping cryptocurrencies together would be like lumping stocks together. Bitcoin is clearly not like the others in many attributes, and was launched and sustained in a way that looks more like a movement or a protocol than an investment. But that over time became an investment as well. As we know, we're all currently investing in Bitcoin. So from there, folks can choose to look into the rabbit hole of thousands of other tokens that came in Bitcoin's wake and make their own conclusions. There's a big spectrum. They're from well-intentioned projects on one side to outright scams on the other side. It's important to realize, however, that even if real innovation is happening somewhere, it doesn't mean the tokens associated with that project will necessarily have durable value. If a token solves some novel problem, its solution could end up being readapted to a layer on a larger protocol with a bigger network effect. Likewise, any investment in those other tokens has an opportunity cost of being able to purchase more Bitcoin instead. Basically, what she's saying in that last sentence here is that, say you find a small coin. I love, me and my investment buddy, Al, we talk all the time, and I love finding small cap coins, those coins that are, under $100 million in market cap, because they have great potential to produce an enormous amount of gains. You get a coin that's got a $10 million market cap. All it's got to do to 10x to get to a $100 million market cap. Well, say it goes to a $500 million market cap. That's not out of the realm of possibility, because it's still at a small market cap. But what you do is, when those coins reach those particular market caps, you cash them out. You take those gains out and you roll it into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is going to preserve your gains over time, versus the extreme volatility of that smaller coin having the potential to collapse on you. So that's kind of what she means in that last statement, in regards to you take that opportunity cost to purchase more Bitcoin. All right, so this, in summary, clearly not a Ponzi scheme. Bitcoin was launched in the fairest way possible. Satoshi first showed others how to do it with the white paper in an academic sense, and then did it for himself months later. And anyone could begin mining alongside him within the first days, as the early adopters did. Satoshi then distributed the development of the software to others and completely disappeared, rather than continue to promote it as a charismatic leader, and so far has never cashed out. From the beginning, Bitcoin has remained an open source and fully transparent project. It has the most organic growth trajectory of the industry. Given the available information, the market has priced it as it sees fit, out in the open. I'm going to stop there in regards to that article, because I know that's a lot. And the bottom half of it talks about the broader definition of a Ponzi scheme, and it kind of compares Bitcoin to gold. There is one section that I wanted to talk about in regard to Bitcoin versus fiat banking, and that's what I was talking about when we first started the webinar, is how there are certain aspects of fiat currency that you can compare it to being a Ponzi scheme. She gave a really good breakdown of that. I'm going to cover that, but I didn't want to do the entirety of the article because it's 22 pages, and it took me about an hour and a half to read it all. Great information, but I don't want to, bore you guys with the technical side of most things. But real quick, do you guys have any statements, any questions, anything that you want to ask related to what we covered in regards to Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme from the SEC's definition of a Ponzi scheme? I saw Cecilia had her hand raised there for a second. I'm going to turn you on. All right, Cecilia, I got you there. If you wanted to say something, go right ahead. Hold on one second, Cecilia. You sound like you're very far away from your microphone. We can barely hear you. No, it's about the same. Go ahead. I'm gonna see if I can turn my volume all the way up and see if I can hear you a little bit better. Go ahead. Okay, I couldn't make it out. Did anybody else? Was anybody else able to hear what Cecilia was saying? Okay, Al said he was able to hear. Give me one second, Al. Cecilia, I'm gonna turn Al on and see if he can reiterate kind of what it is you were saying. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain. I know exactly what she was saying, but I think I caught a little bit at the end. But if it is in relation to Ponzi schemes, I think she wanted to figure out like what are some of the things that we should look out for. You started to mention some things about, they are, people can also always use things as Ponzi schemes, such as Bitcoin, but Bitcoin itself is not a Ponzi scheme. It's pretty much how people decide to use it for their advantage. So, like, what are some of the things that as different investors, early investors. We have some early investors on the phone. We have seasoned investors who knows what to look out for. And then we have, investors that kind of, is kind of meatier that understands kind of a little bit, but, doesn't really understand much. So just know some things to look out for in that type of way in relation to the different investors.
Okay. One thing I would say, as with anything, not just with Bitcoin per se, but with anything, if they're asking you to send them money or to send them something and they're promising to send you more back in return, that should be a red flag right there. The biggest thing is, hey, send me, $500 worth of Bitcoin, and I'll send you back $5,000 worth of Bitcoin. Well, simple mathematics would say, from a business standpoint, if this is their business model, they're going to go out of business in a week. If they're doing this for everybody, where are they producing their return? So that's the first thing, obvious red flag I would look for. Second thing that I would look for is someone asking you for, they're pretending to help you. I see this a lot in Telegram groups. I see this a lot in Telegram groups. That's why I generally don't use Telegram at all. But they'll pretend to, if you have a question, they'll pretend to be support, and they'll pretend to help you, quote unquote, with your wallet or something like that. And the first thing that they ask you for is your private key. Don't give anybody your private key. Literally, don't give anybody your private key. Because as soon as they have your private key, they have your wallet. They have all your funds. They have more access than they would have if you were to give someone your bank account number. Because at least with your bank account number, you have the ability to call the bank and, freeze the transaction or say this was fraud or something like that. If you give someone access your private keys to your Bitcoin wallet or any other cryptocurrency wallet, that's it. There's nobody you can call. So Those are the biggest things that I would look for. Also, I had mentioned this before when it comes to scams, and this is not necessarily for Bitcoin. This is for any other cryptocurrencies that have an actual, I guess, company that developed it or somebody behind it. If they're not transparent, if they're not being very forthcoming with, like I said, their project developments, with their roadmap, who the hell is the team? If you could try to look up the team and you're having a hard time finding who's running this particular project, that's a big red flag for me too. I saw, Al, you had your hand raised again. I went ahead and turned you back on. You have something else you want to add?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for touching back on that as well, because I think that's very important. Kind of doing your research on the back end and being aware of, persons that's actually trying to do Ponzi schemes. So due diligence at the end of the day, right? Before you put your money out there, you want to know what you're putting your money into. One thing you mentioned a while ago too, you said private keys. I think that I'm glad that you that's something that was mentioned a few times on the call. Maybe some people know what it is, some people don't. But if you can explain what the private key is again, Mario, and how can what's the very importance of that? I think you just mentioned it. The private key being very important, but just explain exactly what it is.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So a private key, this is very important in setting up software wallets. If you're going to utilize a wallet like my Ether wallet or something like that, even MetaMask. If you're going to utilize MetaMask, we'll talk about that later on in life. But it's basically, it's kind of like, what's the best way I can describe it? It's like your social security number, your passport, your driver's license, your birth certificate. It's everything that identifies you in regards to your cryptocurrency holdings. So if you're to say like me, and I keep forgetting to bring it downstairs, I apologize to you guys. I do all my work on my in my office upstairs in my office, and I have my hardware wallet up there, and I keep wanting to bring my hardware wallet down so I can show it to you guys. I always forget. But once you guys become a little bit more seasoned in cryptocurrency, I'm definitely going to do a session on showing you guys how to set up a hardware wallet and the importance of setting up a hardware wallet. What they do is it gives you a 24-word seed phrase, which is your private key. And you write that down. They tell you, write it down on a piece of paper. Don't put it in your phone. Don't, type it in your computer and print it out. Don't do anything like that, because printers have memory. A lot of people don't know that, but printers do have memory, and you can hack someone's printer and access the memory on the printer and get everything that they've ever printed off that memory chip. But that's the importance of the private key. Oh, hey, thank you. All right. She just brought me my hardware wallet. So, okay, so I get to show you guys what my hardware wallet is. This is the hardware wallet. I use the Ledger Nano X, and this is what stores my private keys for all of my cryptocurrencies. My entire portfolio sits on this device right here. Now, what Chantel had asked earlier was, if something was to happen to this, I can give this to anybody on this webinar right now. I can give it to you. There's nothing you can do with it. This is where the importance of that private key, that seed phrase that Al was talking about, that I keep talking about, comes into play, because you can't unlock this thing without that 24-word phrase. So that's where this goes into play. All right. So I see Tracy has a question. Hold on a sec, Trace. Let me get you activated here. All right. Go ahead, sir. How you doing, by the way?
Good, Mario. How you doing, man? Nice to talk with you again.
Yeah, it's another night, brother. Another opportunity to be great,
yes,
right?
It is. Yes. Question for you. Where do you get that key from? And is it like a thumb drive?
It's truly a thumb drive. It has a hold on a second. Let me mute you real quick. We got a little feedback. Okay, so it has a USB-C port on it, which it comes with a little cable, and you connect it to the USB port on your computer, and it's it has the, as you can see, the physical attributes of a thumb drive, but it doesn't operate in the same way because it's a lot more secure. It's locked down than your standard thumb drive would be. Also, too, here, I'll turn it on for you guys. This is the Nano X. I'll give you guys a link for it. But you'll see it also has a digital screen on it, and it asks you for your PIN. So that's an extra layer of security. So not only do you need that 24-word passphrase to even activate this thing, you also need you to type in your PIN code to do anything on it. So when you're ready to do a transaction, say you want to, and the only time you need to do this is when you're wanting to send some cryptocurrency. You never need to have this open and active in order to receive it, because you can easily save your public address anywhere and give it to somebody and you can receive cryptocurrency. But whenever you want to do a transaction, you have to sign the transaction on your device. And the only way to sign the transaction is to enter the PIN in, open that particular app, and it's going to tell you right there on the app. It's going to say, hey, confirm it. Are you sure you want to send this? It's so many different levels of security on this thing, which is why I love it, which is why I swear by it, which is why, when people ask me, what do I use? Of course, I use this. And if they say, hey, would you recommend it? I would 100% recommend it. But hopefully I answered your question there, Tracy.
So one other question, where do you get it from? How do you get it?
I'll send you guys out a link so that you can access it. I think this one is like $100. They have the combo pack where you can get this, what Chantel talked about, a backup earlier. They'll give you this one and a model below it just as a backup. So you can have it. It's the Nano S, but when I send out the follow-up email for everybody who has participated in the webinars, I'll make sure I include the links on how you can definitely obtain that. It's a hardware wallet known as a Ledger Nano X. So I'll send that out to you. I'll make sure I'll get those emails out, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
No doubt, my brother. I appreciate it. All right, so let's see. Chantel got her hand raised. Let's bring Chantel into the fold. All right, Chantel, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, and this was also pertaining to Tracy's question too. So the key phrase that you get is not something that you can choose. It's just a randomly generated code of random words.
Yes.
So you're never going to be able to remember it.
You're definitely not going to remember it. And it actually works out that way because one thing about humans, we're very routine. So when humans are asked to pick random numbers, they're not random. It's to the point to where if a person studies you long enough, they know the sequence of numbers that you're going to pick. They can almost tell you what you're going to pick next because we operate in a routine state, in a routine mind state. So there's nothing random about humans. That's the beauty of having the device itself generate those random terms. And I have to look it up again because I don't remember it. It's been a long time since I actually researched the ledgers to find out how the words are generated. But they're all very intentional words that is hard to replicate. It's amazing the algorithm in which they use to get these words. They're all from the dictionary, but the security level is almost like they're saying that even quantum computers would have a hard time cracking the C phrases, the 24-word phrases on these devices. And that's a quantum computer. That's the thing that, Microsoft has in the middle of the ocean somewhere that looks like a giant ceiling fan that talks to you as you're walking around from those sci-fi movies, as you're walking around the entire complex, it's talking to you. So the level of security is incredible on these things. All right, I see Alex has a question. Let me bring Alex into the mix here. All right, let me see. All right, Alex, what's going on, my brother? How you doing, man?
Man, what's going on, man? I had a curious question. So I got, we talked about Coinbase before, and I got the wallet for that, but I was curious how is it that I can transfer some coins over, but for instance, like I got Algorand, and I know we spoke about that before, and it says that it's not compatible with the Coinbase wallet. So how would I be able to transfer you know, things from Coinbase towards a outsourced wallet like you have that you're speaking on right now?
Well, and that's interesting that the Coinbase wallet doesn't support Algorand, because if I'm not mistaken, Algorand is an ERC20 token. I'll confirm that. I'll look it up real quick, but I think Algorand is an ERC20 token, which basically means you can send it to your Ethereum address, and it'll list under your Ethereum address. Let me look it up real quick here. Hold on a second. But in short, basically what you can do is once you do get your hardware wallet, it's easy at that point. I'm gonna do an entire class on how to set these things up, how to transfer to and from them, and you'll be amazed. Like I sat Al down. Well, we sat down for like an hour, Al, and shoot, man. After I got him set up and he walked through it, man, sky's the limit for him. He don't even need me no more. But which is good. I mean, that's where I want you guys to be. I want you guys to get to the point to where you don't need me anymore. You're telling me about potential, opportunities and things like that. Like you're calling me saying, "Hey, man, we got this, we got that over there," and I'm like, "Oh, that's perfect." That lets me know that I'm doing a great job. But let me see here. But yeah, like I said, that's interesting that they say
Yeah, because
Algorand.
it has some like Cardano, Celo,
Yep.
Cosmos. None of them are like connected with it, but like of course
Right.
Bitcoin is, and USDC and Link, all that's connected. So I was just making sure, like I don't want to put money into something that's not gonna allow me to like take it back out eventually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Algorand it's a good project. I think it's a DeFi project, if I'm not mistaken. Decentralized finance. There's some big news, some big buzz about it. It does have a pretty high market cap. Let me see. The market cap on it is currently 2.8 billion. So it does have a pretty high market cap, which makes it a little bit more stable. To be honest with you, it's more of a safe bet to get into. But yeah, let me. And it's actually ranked number 38 in the cryptocurrency chart right now. So it's definitely not a bad bet. It's not a bad thing to get into. But I could have swore, and I could be wrong, but I thought Algorand was ERC20. I'm trying to find it. You ever notice when you're on the spot and you're trying to find something right then and there, you'll never find it, but it's sitting right in front of your face? Let's see. Yeah, it shows the Algorand is supported on the Coinbase wallet. You can get it on. Yeah, they have their own wallet also, but it also shows support on the Coinbase wallet. We'll talk offline, and we'll look into exactly why you're having a hard time. Where are you trying to transfer it from?
So I got Coinbase, and I downloaded the Coinbase wallet, and so basically it connects the two, and it shows everything which ones can connect, and it's literally saying right now that it's not allowing Algorand to do it, because that's really where I got a lot of stuff. I bought a lot of stuff with Algorand, and it says not available for send. So it says not yet supported by wallet. So if I have to get an off market one like you got, then I'm all for it, man. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right things.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm looking it up on Coinbase right now. So let's see, Algorand. Let's see, it's in the wallet. Algorand's cryptocurrency blockchain. Oh, okay. So I guess they do have their own blockchain. It's not ERC20. Because it looks like they operate on proof of stake blockchain. So yeah, I guess they are their own entity in regards to how their wallets work. So yeah, we'll talk offline. I'm pretty confident it's an easy thing to get done.
Gotcha.
All right. So let's see. All right, I see Chantel has another question. So give me a sec here. Let's bring Chantel back into the mix. And once we do Chantel's question, then I'm gonna go back to the document and give you guys the breakdown on Bitcoin versus fiat, because I want you guys to, really look into or to understand the differences, why the banking system itself could be considered a Ponzi. So hold on one second. Let's get Chantel back on. Hold on. All right,
I
go
didn't
ahead,
have a
Chantel.
question.
Oh,
I
it
didn't
said
have a
your hand
question.
was raised.
Why did
Look.
you?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it says your hand was raised, so we raised your
Yeah, I
hand.
just my bad.
All right. All right. Well, let's go back over to the document here. Like I said, I want to give you guys this one more tidbit. So here we talk about Bitcoin versus fiat banking system. All right. By the broadest definition of a Ponzi scheme, the entire global banking system is a Ponzi scheme. Firstly, fiat currency is an artificial commodity in a certain sense. A dollar, in and of itself, is just an object made of paper or represented on a digital bank ledger. Same for the euro, the yen, and other currencies. It pays no cash flows on its own, although institutions that hold it for you might be willing to pay you a yield, which is basically your percentage return, or in some cases could charge you a negative yield. You know how they talk about negative interest rates? That would be when they're charging you for having your money in the bank. So, right now you're getting what, 0.01% of APY right now. Guess what? There's only one more place that it can go before it hits zero. And that's 0.1, and then it's at zero. Then it'll go negative. If it's at negative 0.01%, that means they're charging you for having your money in the bank. Even though it'll appear as pennies, but shoot, they're my pennies. I work for those pennies. I earn those pennies. Anyway, going back to the document, when we do work or sell something to acquire dollars, we do so only with the belief that this large network effect, including a legal government, including a legal/government network effect, will ensure that we can take these pieces of paper and give them to someone else for something of value. Secondly, when we organize these pieces of paper and their digital representations in a fractional reserve banking system, we add another complicated layer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with how fractional reserve banking works, but basically what that means is you can deposit $100 into the bank. The bank doesn't have to keep that $100 in the bank. They can actually lend that $100 back out to someone else as a loan on interest. So, and this is what we talked about earlier, where if people were to do a bank run, and because of the fact that your money isn't physically in the bank, it doesn't have to be one-to-one. At some point, they can tell you, no, you can't take your money out because they don't have it. Not because they don't want to give it to you. It will literally be because they don't have it. So anyway, and I guess I kind of spoiled the next sentence. It says if about 20% of people were to pull their money out of their bank at the same time, the banking system would collapse. Or more realistically, the banks would just say no to your withdrawal because they don't have the cash. This happened to some U.S. banks in early 2020 during the pandemic shutdown. I talked about that when we were talking about people panic buying, and occurs regularly around the world. That's actually one of the SEC's red flags of a Ponzi scheme: difficulty receiving payments. How many times have you tried to? God. Okay, so quick story. I'm gonna come back to this. I know I segue a lot, but that's what we're here for. I recently bought a new car. Bought a new car for me and bought a new car for my girlfriend. And I was doing a cash transaction because, thankfully, cryptocurrency has been very good of an investment in helping us, acquire that financial security that we've been looking for. So I go to the dealership. I said, hey, I want that car right there. What can you do for it? We negotiated the price. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to pay cash. I had to call the bank and ask them, hey, I'm about to allow this dealership to swipe my card. Can I do it? I had to ask them permission to spend my own money. Some people say that's a security measure. I say that's, draconian. That's me having to get authorization to spend the money that I worked for, that I earned. I don't like that. I like that. Oh, that's an example of the bank telling you no. I do that twice. And the second time, when I got my girlfriend her car, I had to do a wire transfer. It took 2 days, 2 whole days to do this wire transfer. I had to call. They had to email me a paper. I had to fill out the paper, had to fax it back over to them. They had to call me again the next business day to confirm that I was who I said that I was. Hence, me sending the paper with my ID, even though I was the one who called to initiate it. And then after they called to confirm that I was who I said I was, they still made me wait a whole nother day before they would complete the wire transfer. 2 days I had to wait for a wire transfer. Bitcoin, this happens in minutes, 10 minutes, depending on how much transaction volume is happening on the network at any point in time, maybe 30 minutes. I don't have to wait 2 days, and I don't have to call and ask for permission to spend my own dang money. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to give that little piece out there. I know I segue a lot, but going back to the article. So in the well-known musical chairs game, there's a set of chairs. Someone plays music, and kids of which there is one more than the number of chairs starts walking in circles around the chairs. When the music stops, all of the kids scramble to sit in one of the chairs. One slow or unlucky kid doesn't get a seat and therefore leaves the game. In the next round, one chair is removed and the music resumes for the remaining kids. Eventually, after many rounds, there are two kids in one seat, and then there's a winner when that round ends. The banking system is a permanent round of musical chairs. There are more kids than chairs, so they can't all get on. So they can't all get one. If the music were to stop, this would become clear. However, as long as the music keeps going with occasional bailouts via printed money, we all know that as quantitative easing, it keeps moving along. Banks, or they call it stimulus. It's not a stimulus. It's devaluing your money. It's removing the purchasing power from your dollars, which is why it costs more to buy something today than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so on and so forth. All right, so banks collect depositor cash and use their capital to make loans and buy securities. We talked about that when they call fractional reserve lending. That's basically what that is. Only a small fraction of deposited cash is available for withdrawal. A bank's assets consist of loans owed to them, securities such as treasuries and cash reserves. Their liabilities consist of money owed to depositors. Think about this. Every time you deposit money into a bank, that shows up as an asset on your balance sheet, but it shows up as a liability on the bank's balance sheet. How does that make sense? You just gave the bank your money. It shows up as a liability on their balance sheet. Why? Because now they owe it to you. And now they're in debt to you for that amount of money, which they're going to turn around and lend right back out. But, all right, so their liabilities consist of money owed to depositors, as well as any other liabilities they may have, like bonds issued to creditors. A lot of people don't know this, but a bond is literally just a debt note. That's all bonds are. It's an IOU saying, hey, I appreciate you for purchasing our debt. We'll pay you back with interest later on in life, primarily 10 years. But anyway, for the United States, banks collectively have about 20% of customer deposits held as cash reserve. So if you give them $100, if you came back tomorrow, they'll tell you, sorry, man, we only got $20 of your $100 on us right now. Give us a couple of days and then we'll get it for you. Now, they reference a chart here, but the chart shows the percentage reached below 5% prior to the global financial crisis, which is why the crisis was so bad and marked the turning point in the long-term debt cycle. But with quantitative easing, we talked about that. You guys know it as a stimulus check. New regulations and more self-regulation, banks now have about 20% deposit balance as reserves. Similarly, the total amount of physical cash in circulation, which is exclusively printed by the U.S. Treasury Department, also known as the Federal Reserve, which is nothing federal about it. They're about as federal as Federal Express, as somebody likes to say, is only about 13%, as much as the amount of commercial bank deposits. And only a tiny fraction of that is actually held by banks as vault cash. There's not nearly enough physical cash by design for a significant percentage of people to pull their capital out of banks at once. People run into difficulty receiving payments, and many banks have to use a combination of cash and vault cash to if enough of them do so around the same time. As constructed in the current way, the banking system can never end. If a sufficiently large number of banks were to liquidate, the entire system would cease to function. If a single bank were to liquidate without being acquired, it would hypothetically have to sell all of its loans and securities to other banks, convert it all to cash, and pay that cash out to depositors. However, if a sufficiently large number of banks were to do that at once, the market value of the assets they are selling would sharply decrease and the market would turn illiquid because there's just not enough available buyers. Realistically, if enough banks were to liquidate at once and the market froze up as debt loan sellers overwhelm buyers, the Federal Reserve would end up creating new dollars to buy assets to re-liquidity the market. Again, we know that as quantitative easing, also known as stimulus, also known as buying junk bonds. You guys have probably heard the phrase that the Fed has bought a ton of junk bonds in order to keep the market propped up. That's basically what she's talking about here. Otherwise, everything nominally collapses because there aren't enough currency units in the system to support an unwinding of the banking system's assets. So the monetary system functions as a permanent round of musical chairs on top of artificial government issued commodities, where there are by far more claims on the money, the kids. Something just flew in front of me. That was weird. All right, but sorry. I'll start that one over. So the monetary system functions as a permanent round of musical chairs on top of artificial government issued commodities, where there are by far more claims on that money, the kids, than money that is currently available to them, the chairs, if they were to all scramble for it at once. The number of kids and chairs both keeps growing, but there are always way more kids than chairs. Whenever the system partially breaks, a couple more chairs are added to the round to keep it going. We accept this as normal because we assume it will never end. The fractional reserve banking system has functioned around the world for hundreds of years. First gold-backed, and then we know in 71 they took it off the gold standard, and then totally fiat-based. That's what happened in 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So it basically became paper, albeit with occasional inflationary events along the way to partially reset things. Each individual unit of fiat currency has degraded about 99% in value. Let me say that one more time, and I'm gonna highlight this for you. Each individual unit of fiat currency has degraded about 99% in value. That goes back to what I talked about when I said what you used to could buy with $1 20 years ago. Good luck trying to buy that today with that same dollar. All right. Or moreover, the multi-decade timeline. This means that investors either need to earn a rate of interest that exceeds the real inflation rate, which is not currently happening because they're not giving you, they're giving you 0.01% yield on your money, or they need to buy investments instead, i.e. real estate, Bitcoin, gold, basically assets that increase in value that hedge inflation, which inflates the value of stocks and real estate compared to their cash flows and pushes up the prices of scarce objects like fine art. Over the past century, T-bills and bank cash just kept up with inflation, providing no real return. They basically people talking about why they bought T-bills and bonds. It's pretty much to hedge inflation. That was the purpose of it. However, this tends to be very lumpy. There were decades such as the 40s and 70s and 2010s where holders of T-bills and bank cash persistently failed to keep up with inflation. They lost purchasing power. The chart below shows the T-bill rate minus the official inflation rate over 9 years. That's ridiculous. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. So Bitcoin is an emergent deflationary savings and payments technology that is mostly used in an unlevered way, meaning that most people just buy it, hold it, and occasionally trade it. There are some Bitcoin banks and some folks that use leverage on exchanges, but overall debt in the system remains low relative to market value, and you can self-custody your own holdings. So basically what she said in that last sentence there, is that you can count on Bitcoin pretty much being 1-to-1. If I got one Bitcoin here and I want to sell it to you, it's worth the exact same Bitcoin. It's not a situation where there'll ever be a run on Bitcoin. We're not over leveraging Bitcoin. It's not a fractional reserve type situation. Bitcoin wasn't designed that way. So I really wanted to share that with you guys because I felt like that was big and very important for you all to know, especially if you've never heard of fractional reserve lending, if you've ever wanted to know how Bitcoin stacks up versus fiat currency, if you have no idea what what fiat currency truly was. I really wanted to share that section with you guys before we ended today's session. So, do you guys have any questions, any statements, anything you want to say around that? I mean, how mind blowing was that? How many people actually knew that before I just read it off to you? Yeah, I got Al. All right, go ahead, Al.
Yes, Mario. Thanks, bro. I just think it's cool how you mentioned, Bitcoin versus fiat, and it kind of brings my mind to how now you have some companies are accepting Bitcoin payments. You talked about payments with Bitcoin. Going through kind of sometimes for large wires or wire transfers, it takes the banks longer times to process those than Bitcoin payments and so forth. So that makes it a lot more attractable to a lot of businesses and um, institutions as well. So just with that being said, with Bitcoin being an attractive means of a payment option for these companies, how it speaks of the value. So, for instance, let's just use the guy that actually bought pizza way back in a few years back when Bitcoin was at a low. He bought pizza now. That pizza for $10 is worth like $400 right now. You know what I mean? So I think accepting Bitcoin payments, what I'm trying to say is more attractive to companies because the value of it, how it seems to be going up and has been trending upwards for the past few years. For somebody to make a payment on an actual purchase right now, that payment value would be worth a whole lot in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have set up my my online situations where I'll accept Bitcoin. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, I wouldn't recommend paying for anything in Bitcoin. This is where I'm going to pull a 180. Believe it or not, this is where I would say use Dogecoin. If like the Mark Cuban announced that the Dallas Mavericks are accepting Dogecoin as forms of payment, Dogecoin isn't going to retain its value. So I would, anybody who's willing to accept Dogecoin for a payment, I'll buy Dogecoin right now and I'll send it over to them. I'm not selling my Bitcoin. I'm not gonna, like you talked about with the pizza guy. He bought 2 large pieces for 10,000 Bitcoin. Granted, at the time, Bitcoin had no value. He actually was the first person to establish a monetary value for Bitcoin in doing that transaction without even realizing that's what he was doing. So, given that Bitcoin is continuing to increase in value and is becoming more a store of value versus a form of payment, I wouldn't recommend buying anything with Bitcoin. The companies that are offering Bitcoin as a payment option, they're smart. That's one way that they can take Bitcoin from you and increase their Bitcoin holdings. You see what I'm saying? Because they know that the value of Bitcoin is going to continue to rise. If you see right now what the price of Bitcoin is, like 56, 50 somewhere, it's teetering between $55,000 and $60,000. If you see that and that, at some point the price of Bitcoin is going to be over $1 million, are you going to spend your Bitcoin, to go on a trip or to buy a Tesla? I think Elon Musk was talking about potentially allowing people to buy Teslas with Bitcoin and things like that. No, there's no way, So in that regard, like I said, I'll promote the hell out of Dogecoin because anybody who's willing to accept Dogecoin as a form of payment, I'll be happy to give it to you. But my Bitcoin, no, I would never buy anything with Bitcoin today. Not today, not tomorrow. Maybe 10 years from now when Bitcoin is at $10 million a coin. then I'll think about it. But I even then, I'm probably just going to use it as leverage. I'm probably just going to, use it as collateral, take a loan out against it for what I need, buy what I need to buy at that point, live off credit, not have to pay taxes on that line of credit. So at that point, I'm not realizing the gain. I'm not selling my Bitcoin, so I don't have to pay capital gains taxes. You don't pay taxes on loans. And I can live happily ever after and never get rid of my Bitcoin. So when it comes down to that, that's kind of my plan. That's my strategy for it. It's definitely not going to be a situation where, I'll be using my Bitcoin as a form of payment anytime soon, to be honest with you. But yes, going back to your initial statement, yes, you most definitely can. And it's definitely being adopted, even more widely accepted as a form of payment. But I think that's primarily because of the fact that companies realize its potential earnings value, its potential appreciation, and that they know it's going to be worth a whole hell of a lot more in the future than it is today. All right, so I see Cecilia got her hand raised, so we're gonna give you one more opportunity to speak, Cecilia. Hopefully we can hear you. Okay. All right, go ahead. Can you hear me, Cecilia? I see you had your hand raised, so I got you unmuted, so you can, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, go ahead. All right. Well, I guess we can't hear Cecilia anymore. Al, I think you had your hand raised again. Did you want to make another statement?
No, I just want to thank you again for kind of showing how much value Bitcoin has, because at the end of the day, the value is rising. And, you mentioned you don't want to sell Bitcoin right now. It's like for the long-term gain, you buy it, you hold it because it's going to be supposedly worth a whole lot of money in the future.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, when looking at the chart, like they always say, zoom out. The chart today may show Bitcoin right here, but when you zoom out, you'll see where Bitcoin started. It started here and it's continuing to go, it's trending up. So most people pay attention to that. Even if it does have a 20-30% retracement, that's just for right now. Again, we're in it for the long term. If you're a trader, if you're learning to trade, then you definitely want to capitalize on those, take your profit. But yeah, most traders just roll their profit right back into more Bitcoin. They can see a dip coming. When that dip comes, they exit their positions right before the dip happens, and they buy right back in with the profits that they made. So they're basically increasing their Bitcoin stash. All right, I'm gonna give Cecilia one more opportunity to talk. Let me see. Let's see. Okay, so we got a question in the Q&A side from Pamela. Then I'll come back to Cecilia. He said she's new to this. Can I recommend a learning platform for more informational understanding crypto strategies, charts, etc.? Well, believe it or not, if you're still on, Pamela, I am going to next week. Next week's topic is going to be 10 resources to use, and it's going to include charting. It's going to include coming up with good strategies. I'm going to give good places that you can use to get further knowledge on cryptocurrency as a whole. So next week's topic is definitely going to be geared around the resources to become a lot more knowledgeable in the space. All right, now let's give Cecilia one more opportunity. All right, Cecilia, if you can hear me, you can go ahead and ask your question, Cecilia, or make your statement. Or if you want to, you can also type it in the Q&A section, kind of like what Pamela did. But I got you activated so you can talk. So if you do want to go ahead and make a statement, you can. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this session, this webinar. Be on the lookout. And touching back up on Pamela's question, I'm actually creating a course. I have a course right now for intro to cryptocurrency. It's like Crypto 101, where it definitely gives you, like an introduction to getting into cryptocurrency. So I do have that course. I'm in the process of creating other courses to get more advanced and focus on exact topics around the cryptocurrency space, kind of similar to what we do with our Crypto Talk Tuesdays. But this is kind of more of an open forum. I'll have a topic that I want to read an article about and share some information on it. And after that, it kind of becomes more of an open forum. But I am in the process of creating an actual, I guess you could say, curriculum that will help you guys. That's more detailed and more geared towards, stepping you into becoming a better investor. So that will be coming, but it's in the process. So next week, like I said, next week's topic is going to be geared around useful tools, different resources that you can use to help strengthen your knowledge and, help you with your investing. And by all means, guys, you can reach out to me. Everyone who's on here knows that I'm not a hard person to get in contact with. I'm a hard person to reply, but once you have me, you have me. So, if you guys have direct questions that you kind of want to do one-on-one that you're not comfortable asking in a public forum, by all means, just, reach out to me. I'll gladly share my email address. I send the emails out from the Crypto Scholars email address anyway. So it's cryptotalk@cryptoscholars.org is the actual email address. You guys can inbox me on the Crypto Scholars Instagram or the Crypto Scholars Facebook page. They're both at cryptoscholars.org. So I'm very accessible. I do a lot because, I do web development, blockchain development, things like that. I have multiple companies that I'm running. But at the same time, I will always make myself available to people who have questions, who want to learn more in the space. So, don't hesitate. Don't feel like, this is something that you can't get specialized, one-on-one for. And I won't charge you guys for that, especially the guys who partake in this, the Crypto Talk Tuesdays. I'm a wealth of information ready to share, as you can see in these particular webinars. So anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. I appreciate you guys for coming on. As always, it was a great session, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. So we'll talk again. Y'all have a great night, okay?